Hayley Mills has enjoyed a long career filled with memorable moments, but even someone as seasoned and beloved as she is can have a memory she'd prefer not to revisit. Although she has spoken over the years about both the joyful and painful parts of her early stardom, fans are often surprised to learn that there is one particular episode she filmed back in 1961 that she still avoids watching. It's not because it was a failure, far from it. The episode is part of a period in her career when she was one of the most famous young actresses in the world, celebrated for her charm, talent, and poise. And yet, for Hayley, this specific role carries a weight that time hasn't quite lifted. In 1961, Hayley was balancing an unusual life, a teenager living under the glare of international fame, already a Disney icon thanks to Pollyanna and soon The Parent Trap. She was in enormous demand. Disney lent her to various television projects, and one of those appearances would later become the one she quietly tried to forget. On the surface, nothing about the episode seems troubling. It showcased her acting ability, featured a touching storyline, and was warmly received by audiences of the time. But what viewers didn't see, what they couldn't see, was what was happening in Hayley's real life. That year was emotionally complicated for her. She was growing up, navigating the pressures of intense studio expectations, and dealing with the uncomfortable transition from childhood to adolescence in front of cameras. According to interviews she's given years later, the work itself was never the issue. It was the circumstances surrounding it. Just before filming the episode, her schedule had become overwhelming. She was battling exhaustion, loneliness, and the creeping realization that her life was no longer her own. Each project demanded a new version of her, and though she loved acting, she didn't always love the machine surrounding it. The episode at the center of her reluctance involved a storyline that, ironically, mirrored some of her own personal anxieties. In it, she played a character who struggled with feelings of displacement and uncertainty, emotions Hayley herself was grappling with privately. When she watched the playback shortly after filming, she didn't see a performance. She saw herself, raw and unguarded. That alone was enough to make her uncomfortable. But what truly cemented her refusal to revisit it was the memory of how emotionally drained she had been during that time. The episode became a kind of time capsule, reminding her of a pressure-filled chapter that she preferred not to relive. Even decades later, after earning awards, accolades, and the admiration of generations of fans, Hayley has admitted that the early 1960s were a whirlwind. Fame had come quickly, and as much as it opened doors, it closed others. While filming that particular episode, she remembers feeling isolated despite being surrounded by people. She was expected to be cheerful, talented, composed, and endlessly professional, a tall order for anyone, let alone a girl barely in her teens. Watching herself on screen from that period feels, to her, like watching someone trapped between who she was and who the world wanted her to be. It's not uncommon for actors to avoid certain projects from their past, but Hayley's reason is unusually personal. She doesn't dislike the story, the performance, or the people she worked with. In fact, she has spoken fondly of her colleagues and their kindness. Her hesitation comes from the way the episode instantly transports her back to emotions that were too big for her to process at the time. Looking back on her younger self, she has expressed deep empathy, even protectiveness. She would rather honor that girl by not forcing herself to re-experience those moments. Over the years, fans have tried to guess which episode it is, but Hayley has been deliberately vague. She doesn't name it publicly, not to create mystery, but because she doesn't want the focus to be on the content itself. For her, it's not about the scene or the dialogue. It's about what she was living through behind the scenes. The episode symbolizes a moment when she realized the cost of fame, even the kind that comes wrapped in Disney sparkle. Interestingly, her reluctance to revisit that piece of her past hasn't dimmed her affection for acting. If anything, it has deepened her understanding of herself. She often speaks about how grateful she is for her career, acknowledging both the joys and the burdens that came with it. The episode she refuses to watch stands as a reminder of how far she has come from a young girl navigating pressures she never asked for to an adult who can, finally, choose what parts of her past she wants to engage with. In the end, her decision not to rewatch that 1961 episode isn't about shame or regret. It's about emotional self-preservation. Hayley Mills doesn't owe anyone a perfect, pain-free past. What she does offer, through her honesty, is a rare glimpse into the vulnerability behind the polished performances. And perhaps that makes her more beloved than ever, not just as a former child star, but as a person who, like all of us, carries memories she'd rather let rest quietly in the past.